Hi, it's Margaret, and thank you for joining me here on this rather hot and muggy day on the Gardening Me. Today, we're talking drip irrigation. I have this area that I've planted up with perennials. The majority of them I grew from seed. This area has been a little challenging, and even though we have had quite a bit of rain over the summer, we've also had a lot of hot and dry weather in between bouts of heavy rain. So the perennials here are not doing as well as they could. Other than the weather, the water will tend to kind of go along in this direction here. That area down there is kind of like a culvert area, a little bit of a ditch where water collects and drains, but up here it's on a slope towards that area, so water does tend to run off. Now, walking over here to this area, we have a couple of spruce trees in this area, and in between I'm also planting it up again with perennials I grew from seed. There's some salvia in there, there's some foxglove, there's some coreopsis as well. Once again, not doing the best. It is as well on kind of like a bit of a slope here. Now you see I do have a drip line that I have already run. This was from last year, and this drip line here ends right over there. In preparation for getting this area set up with drip, I did run some 3/4 inch mainline tubing. This is tubing that has no holes in it. It's just basically to transport water from one section to another section in this area here. Now, the original plan was actually to have all of this, and then this garden bed kind of goes around the shrubs, and there's some trees, there's more shrubs and annuals on the other side of these shrubs here. This area was supposed to be on a separate zone, but that's a bit of a more complicated thing to do. It's more time consuming because it involves digging a trench underneath the grass to get the water to this area. And while I may want to do that next year, I don't really want to do that this year. So what I'm planning on doing is hooking up the drip in this area to the drip that is in this area here. I do have a 3/4 main line, which is right over there. I don't know if you can see it. There's an end cap there. That's where it ends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach another section of the main line of the solid drip tubing from there, and it's kind of going to go all the way through here. It's going to go in front of that little blue spruce there, but behind all these perennials. It's going to go around the spruce, and it's going to connect to that mainline tubing there. And then what I'm going to do, going back here, is I am going to run 1/2 inch drip between the main line that will be back there and down towards here where this drip tubing is. And in this area, I am going to connect the 1/2 inch tubing, which is going to kind of go down here, and then I'm going to have probably 4 or 5 lines going across. Before we go to the supplies, let's take a quick look at the drawing that I've done. I do a drawing like this primarily to make sure that I have enough of the supplies that I need, and also just to think out how things are going to go, to make sure everything fits well together and I'm not missing something when I'm thinking about it, abstractly in my head. Okay, so I got a couple of rocks to weigh this thing down so it doesn't fly away on me. Now, I'm not going to go through the nitty-gritty here, but just kind of generally, this one here is that small area between the two spruces that I am going to do, and then it's going to go here around the big spruce there. This here is where all the perennials are. Now, this is not to scale. This is basically just showing me what all the connections are that I need. Now, the other thing I sometimes do, I didn't do this in this case, but I kind of just wanted to show an example of what I do, is in order to kind of keep track of all of the different parts that you do need, what I would do is go in with a marker or a highlighter, and I would highlight or mark each different connector that I need. So for example, here, these are 1/2 inch T connectors. When you're looking at something like this, it's kind of easy to miss stuff. So I find it's easier visually if I have everything a different color. So what I would do if I had the entire thing marked up like this is then it's easy to go back and just kind of count all the ones with the blue tees, and then I would have a little legend here saying 1/2 inch compression fitting with the blue tee beside it, and I would indicate how many I need. So that's often what I do. In this case, it wasn't a lot of different ones, so I didn't do that, and I do have a lot of extras as well. So, but just to keep your kind of mind straight on it, especially if this is the first time you're doing something like this, highly recommend it. It makes things a lot easier. So here are the supplies that I'm going to need. And let's start off here. So I have a couple of rows of 1/2 inch drip tubing. Now this one here has emitter holes every 18 inches. This one is one I've had in my drip supplies for a few years now, and I never use it. It's a 12-inch emitter hole drip. And I thought, you know what? I am going to use this guy up. In addition to this, in order to do that extension around the spruce tree, I am going to need the 3/4 inch solid drip tubing. I didn't lug that up onto the deck, but I do have a bunch of that as well, and I will bring that out when I go out there. And let's run through the rest of my supplies. It looks like a lot of stuff, but it really is not that bad. And again, drip seems complicated to install, but you just do it once and you'll realize it really is not complicated at all. So the first thing I have here are a couple of connectors. These are from my old stash back when I used these kind of fittings. I generally don't use these anymore where the tube goes inside here. I usually use the other fittings like this where it's a barbed connector and the tube goes on the outside and then I put a clamp on it. But I am using up all the stuff I already have. So these are for the 3/4 inch lines. I will need a couple of these for that. Then for the reducers, these are T reducers. So what's going to happen is the 3/4 inch solid drip is going to come like this and connect here. And then this here is 1/2 inch. And that is where the 1/2 inch drip line is going to come and attach to that. And after that, everything is going to be 1/2 inch. Once I get to the 1/2 inch tubing, the drip tubing, this is what I'm going to use to connect everything up with. So I have these guys, which are 1/2 inch barbed T connectors. And I also have these guys, which are 1/2 inch barbed elbow connectors. When you're using the barbed connectors, I like to use clamps. It's not 100% necessary, but I like to have that little added assurance that the line isn't going to blow off. So I do have 1/2 inch clamps here, and these are the kind of clamps that you press on one side. You crimp on this side here, and it tightens up the connection around the tube. I also have 3/4 inch clamps to use when I'm using these guys here. When I'm using these, I don't need clamps because it just goes in there and that forms a watertight connection. Now, in addition to that, I have a bunch of tees that are 1/4 inch line tees. So the way it'll go is you have the 1/4 inch small tubing coming from the solid 3/4 inch main line. It'll go in here, and then you have these two here where you have a 1/4 inch tubing in a circle going around the shrub or tree in the middle. So these guys here are straight barbed connectors, and these guys will attach that 1/4 inch tubing to the 3/4 inch main line. Now, as I was editing the video, I realized I didn't do the best job of describing why I needed those little tees and those straight barbed pieces. And that is, there are a few trees and shrubs that I will be using the same method of drip as I did with the arbs. And how it works is this here is the 3/4 inch solid tubing, the mainline tubing, and attached to here is a solid piece of 1/4 inch tubing, and this is where I need that barbed connector. I put 1/2 of the connector in here and the other half pokes into here to connect that line. And then we have that solid piece of tubing going up to this, and you can see it's like a circle that goes around the base of the tree or shrub. And this circle here is connected with one of the T barbed connectors. So it goes across like this, and the up and down piece, I guess, of the T goes into the tubing here. And this here that goes around the shrub, that's the drip. And it's drip where the emitters run every 6 inches. I also always kind of bring these guys. These are goof plugs, so if I make a mistake when I'm punching a hole in the main line, this will go in and plug it up. So I have that. And I also have here some landscape staples, which I will use to stick the 3/4 inch and the 1/2 inch drip tubing into the ground. I have what's called a Permalock end cap, and this is going to be going at the end of the 3/4 inch line. And the reason I'm using this, the Permalock ones are a bit more expensive than the regular compression fittings, but they are reusable. You can easily put it on and take it off because it kind of tightens up like that. And then if you want to take it off, you go like this and you kind of take it off of the tubing. And the reason I'm actually using this is because I know that next year I'm going to be expanding that area, and I'm going to be adding more 3/4 inch tubing to that area to push it out a little bit more. So I'm putting on something that I will be able to reuse in the future. And now let's take a quick peek. I do have my insulated mug here, and the reason I have this is I find that the tubing is often quite stiff, and if I put it in hot water for 10-15 seconds, then it loosens up, and getting those fittings on is significantly easier. So I always have that cup of just boiled water in here to do that with. I have a set of pruners, and these are my drip irrigation pruners. They stay in my kit for the drip, and this is to cut basically all of the drip line. I have here my crimper for all of the clamps. And here I have this nifty contraption, and it will make the hole for the 1/4 inch tubing to go into the main line. And I also have, I'm not using this, but just to show you, this is a little bit pricey. This one here, I used it for many, many years, and it's just as effective. It just requires a little bit more elbow grease, a little bit more muscle. And you can use this as well to just poke a hole into that tubing. So, but I kind of upgraded to this because I do so much of this, so it's awesome. It's so easy. And I think that about covers it. So let's go out and get started. This is where I am going to start, and I am going to attach another length of the 3/4 inch poly tubing into this end here. So the first thing I have to do is take off the end that's existing, and this is actually one of the ones that I showed you where you can twist it to take it off, because I thought I may want to expand this. So I was thinking ahead, and I will be able to take this one off. Then I'm going to put a compression fitting on there to attach it to another length of tubing. So this is the compression fitting I'm going to use for this one. I have my hot water here that I'm going to dip the end in. Now, this is attached to some 1/4 inch drip line here, so I'm going to have to be a little bit mindful not to totally yank this out of place. We'll see how that goes. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm twisting this end. There we go. And then I'm just going to kind of twist and pull. There we go. Okay, so now I can reuse this one in another section. And here I can attach the compression fitting like this, and then add my second length. And first you know what, actually make it easier on myself. Instead of putting this here first and then having to lift it and move it around to put the other length, I'm going to start with the length that's already loose and it's not attached to anything. Put that on first, then I'm going to take that and put it in here. So the first thing is you want to make sure that you have a nice clean cut along the edge. You don't want it on an angle, you don't want it all jagged, you want it nice and clean so that it forms a nice leak-free connection. And the other thing is something I didn't do, I probably should have, is this section of tubing is coiled around, and ideally I would like to leave it in the sun, in the hot sun, for maybe an hour or so. It gets much more malleable and it straightens out a lot more easily. But I didn't do that, so I'm just gonna go with it as is. I'm going to dip it here into the hot water for 10-15 seconds. Now I'm going to take it out, and I'm actually going to mark approximately where the fitting should go to, which is about 1 inch or so in. And I do that because once it starts going in, it's kind of hard to tell if you've pushed it in all the way or not. These are, I find, more difficult to use. They take a lot more muscle to get these in. But once you get it in, you kind of just have to wiggle it around, make sure that it goes all the way in. That's one of the reasons I kind of switched from these to the barbed fittings. I find the barbed fittings are easier to use. But, okay, so that section is in. We are good on that. And now we're going to attach this to the section that I just took the end off of. There. And that is done. I'm going to tack it down with a landscape staple. And now I'm just going to run it behind the spruce tree and out to that first section of perennials. So while I'm here, actually, I thought I would just give a quick little peek at the arborvitae that I planted last year that I installed the drip tubing on as well. So this is what it looks like now, and they have grown significantly. I don't know if you saw the video that I did last year on installing drip on this arborvitae hedge, but wow, it is huge. Some of them, I think they're all at least 5 feet, with a couple being, you know, almost 6. So it's pretty insane how quickly these guys have grown. I think they grow taller before they start to bush out. So we'll see how that goes, but I am super, super happy with how that turned out. There, I'm just going to tack it down to hold it in place while I work with it. I may want to add one of the 1/4 inch drip lines to this baby blue spruce. I think I am going to do that. So I don't want it to be too far in here. So I think this is, maybe go out a little bit further. This is good here, like this. I think that's pretty good, because I probably will be putting more perennials in here in between the existing ones that are there and this area here, is my guess. So now I'm just going to figure out where I'm going to start the drip, and I think I am going to start it around here. It'll kind of go in between these foxglove here and then continue going down towards the front of this area. So first I have to put in the reducer, which will take me from the 1/4 inch tubing to the 1/2 inch tubing, which is the diameter of the drip tubing. This fitting, I find, is not really as tight as the other fittings are, so I don't really need to dip this into the hot water, but what I do need to do is add a clamp before I add this to the tube. So here is one of the 3/4 inch clamps, and I'll just put this on first. Then I will slide this on all the way to the end there where it's snug up against that ridge. Now I have the other section here of the tube. I'm going to do the same thing. Put the clamp on first and then just put this in here. So I'm not going to tighten these clamps until I have everything in place, because I often will have to adjust this and kind of move it around, that kind of thing. So I'm going to wait to put these in place for the time being. So now I have a piece of the 1/2-inch tubing. And if you're wondering, well, why am I not just going directly to the drip from this mainline tubing? I could do that, but because I want a rectangle in this area coming out and kind of forming a loop all around, what I'm planning on doing is just going a little bit down with the solid drip, because I don't need any drip in this particular area. It's only going to be a very short run, like maybe 6 inches or something like that. And then I'm going to put one of these guys in, and what'll happen is, well, you know what? Let me just show you what I'm talking about, because I think it's easier to describe once it's actually in. So what I'm going to do is take about a 6-inch piece of the 1/2-inch tubing, like that. And I'm just going to put this in first. Now the tubing is going to go like this, and then this is going to go in like that. So I am going to, you know, make sure you're aware of that and you don't put it in like this, for example. You need to put it in the correct way. For this, I am going to use the water because it is a little bit stiffer to get in. So now this piece is in, and I'm going to put this on here. But before I do that, I need to add 2 clamps, right? Because it's going to be 1 clamp on this side and then 1 clamp on that side. So I'm just going to put 2 on here. Actually, I'll dip it in again. Okay, that should be good. And then boy, I find that this, the 1/2-inch tubing is more difficult to get in there. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get it all the way, but that's okay, because the clamp will take care of that. So when you're clamping, you don't want to clamp right at the end there. You want to clamp a little bit before that section here. Here, you know what? Let me show you. You're going to clamp around here, right? You don't want to clamp it right up against the edge of the tubing. You want to clamp it kind of in this section here after the barb area there, so that it's clamped nice and tight, and then those barbs will, you know, help make it leak proof. This one here has a huge section that's just blank before the first barb starts, so I'm still going to be able to clamp it so that I see that end there. It's still about 1/8 of an inch, I guess, away from the end, and it does not cover, it does not go on top of that barb there. It goes just slightly after the barb, so we should be okay there. And this one I'll just do like around here, that kind of thing. I'm going to clamp these now because I've laid this guy out and it's in the direction I want. So that's pretty good. So I'm just going to clamp these here, and I'll use the clamps that I got, the crimpers, I guess, and just put it where I want it to be and tighten it like that, and nice and snug. And then I'll just do the same to the rest. Now this one here, because I'm still going to be adding to it, I'm just going to leave it loose, and I'll clamp it down once I've finished adding the rest of the drip tubing to that. So now I have my 1/2-inch drip line, and I'm going to just soften it up a little bit. And I think the first one that I'm going to put down is this one here, which goes along the back of this bed. Oh, and almost forgot the clamp. There we go. Just to show what I'm doing here, so this one here that I just attached is the one that's going to run all along the back here. And then I'm going to put an elbow over here. And because I want 3 lines going, 1, 2, and 3, where the elbow is, I'm going to put a T in the middle. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just stretching this section down here towards the area that's going to have the elbow. I'm going to do this first, and then what I'm going to do is around the middle somewhere, I'm going to cut and insert the T. The other thing to note is it's always good to kind of see where the emitters are and try to cut at least a few inches in from any of the emitters. Like ideally, it's nice to cut in the middle of where the 2 emitters are, but you can't always do that depending on the run that you're doing. But you want to do it at least a few inches in. I've attached these, and now I am going to run the drip from these T connectors all the way down the bed so that I have 3 lines going down this bed towards the front of the bed. And they are approximately, I would say, about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet apart. I think I may be pushing 2 feet apart on this. So now that I've attached the far end one there, I'm just going to unroll my roll and cut it off at the front and then come back and attach the other 2 sections in the same way. And this one will probably be around here. And here is an emitter right there, so I don't want to cut it shorter than that. It'll be longer, so I'm going to go out a few inches. The drip line that's going across is here, but I can move that out a bit. So I'm going to come out a few inches and cut it right there, making sure to go straight across. Okay, and there we go. There's the corner. And once again, I'm going to leave these loose until I have everything in place, because I do want a little bit of maneuverability to kind of move these around as I'm working on it. Okay, so I lined these up so that they are approximately 18 to 24 inches apart, and I put in some extra landscape staples to lay them down straight because they are, you know, at this stage having a tendency to coil up a little bit. And now I am just going to go down here and work on these front areas here, and I will be attaching these with a T, and on this side, a T as well, actually. Originally, I was planning on putting a corner in this area here and just cutting the rest of this off, but I think I am going to leave it. If I want to plant anything in this area here, that line will already be in place. So don't forget to double check how you're putting these. If you put this one accidentally like that, it's hard to get out. I've tacked it all down, and the only thing I really need to do now is go back and tighten up all of the clamps. And once that's done, this section is finished. So now we're just going to do the baby spruce tree and hook it up to that black mainline tubing. So what I have here is 1/4 inch tubing that has emitters every 6 inches. And I'm kind of doing a circle around this tree, sort of on the drip line, so kind of closer to the edge of where the tree canopy is. So the first thing I'm going to do is put one of these T's in here, and that's going to go one side in here, one side in here, and then the part over here will be going towards the mainline tubing there. Now, the line that's going out here towards that tubing, I have it here, and this is just solid 1/4 inch tubing. So here is the 3/4 inch mainline tubing, and I'm going to put in the solid tubing like this. So here's the tool that I'll be using to make the hole in this tubing, and there's the little bit here that makes the hole. So I'm just going to go like this, and you just press it in, and bada boom, makes the hole beautifully. I don't know if you can see that, but the hole is right there. So now I'm going to cut this so that it meets up with this here. And for this, I'm just going to use a straight coupling. One side will go in the end of here, and the other side will poke into the tubing where I just made the hole. And it just pops in like that, and there you go. So now we're going to take the end of that line and bring it out here, and then I am going to use my elbow here and attach another one, which will be going kind of underneath the tree right here and over to this side there. And I am going to attach the existing one to that one. Where I attach the two is where I'm going to put that reducer and have all the drip going out into this bed here. Okay, so I am finished this section here, and this is the reducer that is going to go out to the 1/2 inch drip. Exactly the same process as in the last section that I did, except I do not have a line going across there. So I am going to do kind of a closed loop in here with a line going out there, and then all the way across, and then all the way down, and then all the way back here. And then in the middle, I'm going to have lateral lines like this, evenly spaced about 1.5 to 2 feet apart. And that's how we're going to do this section. And we are done. This is actually the next day, because what happened was, remember when I said that one of the rolls that I was using of drip was really old, the one with the 12-inch spacing? Well, as it turns out, that one also, even though it is a 1/2-inch drip line, the interior dimensions, and when you see that online, they'll talk about a certain inch, like 0.56 inches ID, that's the interior dimension. Well, that was slightly smaller than the other drip that I had, and consequently the fittings that I already had. My other drip is 0.60 inches ID. So what happened is I was having such a hard time installing the fittings and I couldn't figure out why. And then I decided, let me double check the interior dimension of this tubing, and lo and behold, it was smaller. So I went to Home Depot and they had the fittings that fit the smaller dimension tubing. I just got enough to complete this section, and it was actually very funny because, as you can see, I ended up here with 6 drip lines going across, and I had exactly enough tubing. The 100-foot roll was enough to do 5 of the 6. So one of the 6, the second one from the end, is my 18-inch tubing, like the typical stuff I use everywhere else. All of the other ones are 12 inches. Also here I have a couple of soft serve cypress, and when I got these, you think they're small now, they were minuscule when I got these, maybe about 12 inches tall. Now they're about, I don't know, they're a little bit more, I think, than 2 feet tall, and it's been about 3 years. These are very slow growing, as I found out after I bought them, but that's okay. I did hook up drip to them with the 1/4-inch drip line there, the same way as I did with the baby blue spruce. So I'm hoping that that will speed up the growth on them. So here's the end of the solid tubing. We're actually on the far side of the bed, way further down the yard, and I am going to be putting this fitting on. This is the one that you can put on and then take off. And the way it works, number one, this is a capped fitting. So you can take the cap off at the beginning of the season to flush out the lines, and then you take it off again when you drain the lines at the end of the season, and then this goes back on so nothing gets in there. And here, this section, so the tubing will go over here, and then this knob here, you just turn it and that tightens the tube so that it's a watertight seal. And that's what we're going to do. I'm actually just reusing the one I had on the other line. So to put this on, you have to open this up all the way and then just fit it on like this. And then you just tighten it up like this. I think that should be good. Now I'm actually going to open this here, because what I'm going to do is flush out the lines right now, make sure there's no debris in these lines that I just put in. I'll let the water run for maybe a couple of minutes, then I'll cap this and I will just kind of go over and make sure all of the drip lines are operating properly and I don't have any clogged drip emitters. It's been running for a couple of minutes, so now I'm just going to put the cap on. And as soon as you do that, you should start seeing some drip action happening. I am happy that finally I have drip in this bed, and this is going to make, I know, such a huge difference with how well the plants do. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.